I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone tonight. It's nice to see a room full of people. Dr. Hibbert, I think I'm going to turn this over to you.
Yeah, at this time, if we could have Mrs. Whaley come to the mic, please. And I believe, Mrs. Whaley, you have several of your staff members with you that would come up as well. Come on up. Come on up, staff. I know you're there. It is with great pleasure that we wanted to recognize Floyd Central High School as a 4-star school in the state of Indiana. So, Janie and your staff, congratulations. It's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The strength of Floyd Central is right here behind me, and staff. It's all staff. So it has little to do with me and very much to do with them. Lovely.
No one wants to say no, nobody?
You would come up, Janie, would you like to shake their hands? Everybody's hands.
Mrs. Whaley, how many years have they received this award? 16 years. That's awesome.
Not consecutive. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Good job. Good leadership. Thanks, guys. Thanks for what you do.
Congratulations. Great job.
What you do?
Great job.
Oh, then Robbie, yes.
Congratulations. Great job. Great job. Yes.
Congratulations. I see you're a good woman. For what you do. Thanks for what you do.
Congratulations. Congrats.
Beanie. Congratulations.
Sorry, Robbie, I didn't recognize you. You're out of place. You're not on a stage. Congratulations to Floyd Central again. I'm very, very proud of them. And like Mrs. Whaley said, they've had this award for 16 years, not consecutively, but they have obtained that award for 16 years. So it's awesome. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, if I might, to the Floyds, we got a lot of Floyd's Knobs Elementary out here in the high school. I just had a daughter walk the Floyd Central stage yesterday, and I gave this administrative team, but we got so many staff here. I just can't tell you how grateful I am for this community, the bus drivers. You know, I'm speaking just as dad. You know, I'm not a staff member here, but Mr. Clooney and Mr. Street and all them, up and down the lineup, she received incredible care. Outstanding teachers, outstanding education, great administration. I mean, I'm just very, very fortunate to live in this community, but I'm even more fortunate that you guys took care of her. So to the 4-star schools and Floyd's Knobs, thank you. And there's a lot of other moms and dads like me. I met them all in the hall yesterday afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, now time for comments from the public. The public is invited to address the board on matters of educational importance. Oral complaints regarding specific students and or personnel will not be heard. School employees are encouraged to contact their immediate supervisor to be heard on specific complaints relating to the terms and status of their employment prior to addressing the board. We ask that you confine your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and we have one person signed up as Joy Lohmeyer.
Good evening, members of the board and those of you that are seated in the gallery. My name is Joy Lohmeyer. I live at 1801 Klerner Lane, New Albany, Indiana, and I too had children in the school corporation who received excellent care. What a great segue, actually, for me to make my comments tonight to you board members. As teachers have closed another successful school year, learning year, and as another bargaining session approaches, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind the board that I stood here almost exactly 1 year ago this evening, in June of 2014. At that time, I emphasized that teachers had stepped up Your teachers have, in the recent past, agreed to cuts in both insurance and retirement benefits, salary freezes, and had given up experience steps as we did our part to place the corporation in the black for the first time in many years. During the same period of time, teachers have stepped up to meet the growing challenges of educating our students by attending countless professional development opportunities, collaborating best practices, identifying students by name and by need, integrating technology. The list goes on and on. Teachers are working with students every minute, bell to bell, and putting in extended hours after students leave each day to evaluate that progress and prepare lesson plans and materials for the following day. Additionally, as my colleagues were closing their classrooms this last week, I heard many chatting about various conferences and professional developments they planned on attending this summer on their own, or books that they would be reading to stay cutting edge in their content areas and within their professional networks. So teachers continue to step up. You might also remember that in June of 2014, I reminded the board that making raises a priority for teachers during the upcoming biennium bargaining session would require prudent planning on your part. On that night, a year ago, several administrators and board members commented publicly that teachers had stepped up, and indeed teacher raises would be a priority. And indeed, to that end, we have met at least one time in a joint meeting to review salary comparisons of our peer group. I appreciate that. Finally, having reviewed the revised agenda sent on Thursday, June 4, I noticed that 2 items were added for discussion. Discussion regarding HR and discussion regarding public relations. I encourage the board that as you discuss these areas or any others, and I don't know what your discussion will entail or what your intent is, I just saw the items on the agenda, that I would hope that before you would consider those or others, that you would consider the financial impact any changes you make may have on the general fund. Indeed, the best HR goodwill that you can give to support your teachers is to be prudent in other expenditures that affect general fund dollars. And the best PR you can get is to have employees who are well compensated financially and share with everyone they meet how great it is to work and learn in New Albany Floyd County schools. In closing, I hope you will consider this quote. It's one I always try to keep in mind when working with all of my colleagues. A person who is valued and appreciated will always do more than what is expected. Thank you for your ongoing support and consideration.
Thank you, Joy. Anyone else? I think that's the only person we had signed up. Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. I would like to remind the board that anyone may remove any item from the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the approval of minutes of the May 11th, 2015 regular session and executive session, the approval of claims, approval of staffing report, approval of 2015-16 cosmetology agreement, approval to declare Prosser items surplus, approval of Apple lease purchase, and approval of overnight field trip request from Floyd Central High School. Does anyone want to pull anything off the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove the staffing report, and the approval of meal costs, just for discussion.
Mrs. Gardner,
Yeah.
there was
Did I miss a page?
like 10 other consent agenda
Oh, there
items.
are. I stapled these wrong. I hate to say that. Excuse me. I'm not starting out too good tonight. You're right. Let me say what else is on the agenda. The approval of the textbook rental and class fees for elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and Prosser. Approval of AP textbook adoption. Approval of additional summer self-supporting program. Approval of assistant to the superintendent contract. Approval of meal cost. Approval of official bonds. Acceptance of fire truck donation for Prosser. Award bid for Georgetown Elementary School site parking improvements. Approval of emergency CPF allocation, that's for the Scribner swimming pool, surge tank replacement, acceptance of 3D printer donation to WNAS. Since I have my pages now stapled in the right place.
That's not WNAS, that's NAHS.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
And you got one more at the top of the next page.
Yeah, the approval of the field request, field trip request. So we're taking off staffing, or the staffing report, and...
Approval of meal costs.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion for the rest to be approved?
So moved.
Do we have a motion from DJ?
Second.
Second from George. Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett? Aye. Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart?
Aye.
Mrs. Gardenauer?
Aye. Ms. Weishart?
Okay, on the staffing report, and I apologize I wasn't able to get some of these questions to you guys sooner with the system crashing over the weekend. It delayed my preparation, but on the staffing report for the Education Foundation Director, it's showing a $2,500 bonus and a 3% increase, and I just wanted to know what fund does that come out of?
That is it's funded, a separate fund that the Education Foundation has. It's a separate their fund that they reimburse us for 100% of all those expenses.
It's their money through our books.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. And then the other thing on the staffing report, it said to reclassify the deputy treasurer position from a grade 24 to a grade 27. I just didn't know why we were jumping that 3 grade levels.
Right. It's a $1.50 increase. That's correct.
So why are we doing that?
Just the performance and duties. We believe it warrants that additional upgrade.
So you changed the reclassification as a means to give a raise instead of giving a raise for those.
Well, the duties changed too, so which required a higher grade level as well.
Okay. Thank you. And then on the meal prices, the approval of the meal costs, I just wanted to make sure that it was made more public to our parents that if I'm reading this correctly, our lunches and our breakfast, our meal costs are going to go up. But Mrs. Casey does a really good job in our food service department. I just wanted to make sure I read this to the public so the public knows that to meet the USDA guidelines, the Department of Education has calculated that the district must increase paid meal prices by 10 cents for the 2015-2016 school year. So in essence, our lunches, if I'm reading it right, will go from $2.30 to $2.40 for elementary kids and $2.40 to $2.50 for our middle school kids. So this is something that I know that over the years, Mrs. Wright, or Casey rather, has been very diligent. It's a self-funded program, and this is not something that we are just saying we're going to raise your lunches.
It's a mandatory.
It's still a Happy Meal under $3, to be honest with you, but I just wanted the public to know that it was mandated.
Correct. It's a mandatory increase by the federal government, not our choice. That's correct.
Okay.
You want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the staffing report and the approval of meal cost.
Second. Second from Jessica. Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart?
Aye.
Mrs. Gardenauer?
Aye. Oh, yes.
At this time, Mrs. Day, if you would, come to the mic. We have a special presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hibbard. Good evening, Board. This evening, we, as part of our staffing report, would like to recommend that Mrs. Luann Sewer be the next principal at Floyd's Knobs Elementary School. Luann, if you'll join me at the podium. Mrs. Sewer has a Bachelor's of Science degree in elementary education from Indiana University. She obtained her Master's of Education from Indiana University Southeast. She completed the Educational Leadership coursework at Indiana University Southeast and holds a current administrative license. Mrs. Sewer's background of experience includes 8 years of teaching in our school district. She has taught high ability students in grades 3 through 6 in a pull-out program. She taught first grade at S.L.N. Jones, then taught kindergarten at Slate Run Elementary. She served 2 years as administrative intern at Floyd's Knobs Elementary. This past year, Mrs. Sewer served as the assistant principal at S.L.N. Jones. Mrs. Sewer has very strong communication skills. She's established an excellent rapport with staff, students, and parents in every school community in which she has worked. Her hard work, her determination, her enthusiasm have always been apparent to everyone in the school community. Mrs. Sewer has an extensive knowledge of best practices in teaching and learning. She leads by example. She walks the walk as well as talks the talk. She is hardworking, dedicated, and the epitome of professionalism. She will be an outstanding principal at Floyd Knobs Elementary. I recommend Mrs. Luann Sewer as the next principal at Floyd Knobs Elementary.
Luann, if you could.
She does have some special guests with her.
Tell us who's with you. Particularly Grace. Hey, Grace.
First of all, I want to thank, I guess in advance, the board for this opportunity to serve. I want to thank Dr. Hibbard, Mr. Briscoe, and Ms. Day for their confidence in my ability to lead a fabulous school. I want to thank the teachers who have come out to support the selection of the new principal. Thank them very much. And then I brought with me my parents, and I want to thank them because my work ethic came from them, and my love and passion for education came from them. And then my husband, Justin, who has supported me as I have pursued a dream, and he has been behind me 100% of the way, as well as my children, Lindsay, who is going to be a senior at Floyd Central, Reed, who will be a sophomore, and Grace, who's going into the 7th grade at Highland Hills. And they have made many sacrifices also so that I could pursue this and pursue my passion for helping children receive the best education that they can. So, and I also thank every principal that I have worked with and my partner, who I will miss dearly, Miss Tamara Swearens, for being just an outstanding partner this year and mentor. So thank you.
This happened.
Congratulations,
Church, no.
Thank you, Luann. And congratulations again, well deserved. Next are the action items. Mr. Briscoe, I believe you're up.
Thank you, Mrs. Gardner. This first item is the approval of revised policy 3131, which is justifiable decrease in teaching positions. Basically, it's out of necessity, out of compliance. The Southern District Court of Indiana has ruled basically that you cannot RIF a teacher if they had tenure. If there are other teachers, you could RIF instead. And in this case, the court also said that tenured teachers is actually the established teacher, and that's any teacher that was hired before July 1st, 2012. I can tell you that this language does not affect any of our prior practice at all. This is what we've been doing all along. We do not anticipate any RIFs this year, so the timing of this has been beneficial to us. And we have fully discussed this with the association, and we recommend approval.
All right. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. George, any discussion? Pam, please.
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett? Aye. Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Mrs. Weishart? Aye. Ms. Gardner?
Aye. Passes 6-0. Okay, next, is this bill is just yours
It's also mine.
Okay.
It's to consider denying 2 parent appeals made by the expulsion examiner. And those that have previously been on the board knows that anytime we have a parent appeal, that we always recommend that we deny hearing that request. If you hear one appeal, you have to hear all of the appeals. We have about 100 expulsions during the year, so it would, just the time of that would be enormous. And I can tell you that the expulsion examiner is the review, basically. The school has recommended, the expulsion examiner brings the school in, they bring the parents in, the students, hear both sides. They do not always agree with the school's decision or recommendation. Sometimes they go with the parent and the student, and we're confident Ms. Jones does a very good job of this, very tough job, and we strongly recommend that you deny hearing these.
All right.
Bill, I know she deals with a lot of expulsions. How many appeals does she have per year?
Well, the appeals are just the ones that I bring to you. So this would be the third time in writing this year. One of them was resolved ahead of time. This is 2, but I can tell you if you start hearing those, I can tell you that every parent will start, any decision they do not like will come before the board, because if they know we're going to hear it, it's going to increase. So I don't think you can go on past numbers. I really don't.
Okay.
Is there any way for them to have any type of third-party arbitration? If they
See, I think the expulsion examiner is the third party. I think that's what their job is. I think they take that. I know Dr. Snyder's done those before and had to sit on a few. Carol Hatch used to do them. And they take the job very seriously. And I can tell you that they really struggle sometimes with the decision to make sure it's the right one. I can tell you in most cases, we don't deny education from students. It's a situation where we give them an opportunity usually to take online classes. So their education, that opportunity is to continue. We're not, in most cases, we're not putting a stop on the education.
And I have complete trust in the expulsion examiner, but I also believe our policy was created to give the opportunity to the parents to have that appeal. And although we have, Sharon does perhaps hundreds of expulsions, because she does a good job, we really don't have that many appeals. So I trust her. However, I do believe, because our policy says the community has a right to that hearing. So
I think the policy says that you will hear it unless you vote not to. In every case that's been brought before in the past, the boards have always voted, and I believe almost unanimously, to deny those. I can tell you I did email one of the attorneys from ISBA to get their feelings on that, Lisa Tanzel, and in her opinion, she said the board does not, as the School Board Association, they do not recommend what districts do, but her own personal opinion was to not hear them.
Okay.
I would maybe be afraid that if we heard everything, it could be a slippery slope, in that anytime maybe a student is punished, the parents don't agree with the punishment, that they would want for us to hear that also. Like, we would almost be micromanaging all the schools in whatever punishment is dealt out. You know what I mean? So I'm agreeing with what you're saying.
In my opinion, it's a slippery slope, but that's the administration's position.
But these are hearings only on expulsion, not because a kid got treated poorly, right? I mean, it's just an expulsion hearing only.
Yeah, this is the decision of the expulsion examiner, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if the entertain a motion, it would consider denied. So if there's a yes vote, that means it's going to be denied, correct? Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion that we deny.
Okay. Mr. Hines, is there a second?
Second.
Jessica? Okay. Any other discussion?
I want to be clear. So a yay vote is going along with what you're saying, Mr. Briscoe?
Denied it.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay. We're ready, Pam.
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart?
No.
Mrs. Gardenauer?
Let me preface this by saying this. In the 10 years on my board, I have always voted no. So I'm voting no again because I feel that students and parents have a right to come to the board. So that's my justification for the vote. So it passes 4-2. Okay. Next is approval of the use of the tablet computer as a textbook. Who's going to take this over? Dr. Jensen?
Good evening, Mrs.
All
Gardner.
righty.
How are you doing? Last month I presented to you the Helen Initiative, and we talked in great length about coming to this point. Earlier on the consent agenda, you approved our fees and you approved the lease for Apple. In order for us to recoup expenses for students who qualify for textbook assistance, we need to approve that recommendation that I have there on the agenda. So if anyone has any questions, I'll answer them. But in essence, we just basically want you to approve that in the future, New Albany Floyd County Schools can use a tablet or a computer in lieu of a textbook. And that allows us to collect money through textbook assistance for those students who qualify.
All right. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Nobody wants to repeat the whole thing. Is there any discussion on this? I think we've pretty much had our questions answered. Pam, you want to call the roll, please?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Mrs. Weishart? Aye. Ms. Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was easy, wasn't it?
Thank you.
Painless.
He's going to sit down. It's done.
He's done. All right. Recommend acceptance of child care proposal. Is that? Oh, Michelle. Okay.
This evening, I would like to recommend that we engage in a 3-year contract with YMCA for our before and after school care program. In our opinion, the best responsible and responsive proposal is YMCA. I'm not going to talk you through each of these slides as I know that you had them in your board packet. This outlines process and timeline that we followed, as well as the next slide, Pam, outlines the factors and criteria in which our team used to determine the best provider. Adult and child ratios, the next slide, was pretty much even. Both companies, Champions and YMCA, had a relatively good ratio there. We scored them equally because Champions had the smaller ratio, but we very much appreciated that YMCA was willing to provide one-to-one response for any special needs child that might be in need. The cost of services to the parents really weighed heavily on our decision. Champions was willing to give a 10% multi-child discount, but YMCA, they gave a flat rate discount. And for families that have their children in before or after school care 3 to 5 days per week, if the second child they added, the fee would go from $65 to $50, which is a 23% discount. And then if they had a third child, it would be reduced to $35, which was a 46% discount. So when we're looking at this, not really as a fundraiser, it is a service to our parents so that children have before and after school care at the same site where they attend school. We felt like that was huge. And so that was really a determining factor. There are other perks and benefits on the cost of services. For example, if you're a YMCA member at our local YMCA or the Clark County YMCA, there's an additional reduction. If you're a New Albany Floyd County employee, there's a reduction. So all of those we thought were really important to keep that affordable and to have benefits to our community. In description of services, this was a new option that YMCA came to us with, and they're willing to give 5% cash back on the total profits. So we thought that, again, for use of maintenance, utilities, and space usage, that was very much a positive. Champions had many wonderful offerings within the services, but we really liked the 5% cash back, as well as our YMCA partners with our local community organizations, Junior Achievement, Boy Scouts, Purdue Extension, Ivy Tech, IUS, New Albany Floyd County Public Library, and those are already established partnerships. So we felt like that was a huge positive and plus for YMCA as well. Curriculum and daily schedule, they were pretty even. Both have really neat offerings that they would provide for children. And Champions had a robotics program that I still want to try to figure out how we could get for the children, because it was just really neat on how children can build robotics and that whole science, technology, engineering, and math. YMCA had the partnerships that I talked to you about, and they're incorporating some of our current strategies at the elementary level with conscious discipline, 40 developmental assets, those type of things that we already have in place that will just be streamlined with the children when they go into after school care, because they're hearing that at school each and every day. The references, again, were even, had some great references from Champions Company as well as great letters of reference for YMCA, so we scored those equally. So again, given the positives that I've shared with you this evening and then the outline I sent to you, we would like to recommend that we engage in a 3-year contract with YMCA. In our opinion, the YMCA is the best responsible and responsive proposal.
It had been a couple of years since we've taken proposals, and so that's why we put out RFPs and brought it forward, just to make sure we were getting services.
Who was this Champions? I've never heard of them before. Are they like a national?
They're based out of Chicago.
Out of Chicago?
Their corporate office is in Portland, and then their regional office is in Chicago. That was another, just a little bit of an angst on our part in that we're not really sure how that would be with a long-distance partner. They were going to employ people in this area, of course, but that was just another, that's an unknown versus YMCA is a known.
Right, right.
Mrs. Day, when we have our balanced calendar and the kids are out for fall break, does this count for that also? Do the same rates apply?
Well, the all day is $25. Well, okay, so like the 3 to 5 week, because they have them all day versus the before and after, it's an additional $25 for that week, because obviously they're keeping them much longer. But they've been great about when we shifted to the balanced calendar to make sure on in-service days, summer, as well as the intersession time, that they have care offered for parents.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I was going to tell you, if you're interested in robotics,
yes,
that's through the Purdue Extension. They have a robotics 4-H club.
That's one of the things that I said to Joe LaRocca, is that I just want to see if we can find a way to do that, because it was really, really, Fred and I both talked to the gentleman about it, just a really, really neat opportunity for children.
Yeah, talk to Melissa at Purdue.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
I second it.
Donna, okay. Any other discussion? Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart? Aye. Ms. Gardner?
Aye. Passes 6-0. Okay. I assume Bill Briscoe, who's got the next one? Fred, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Approval of a contract with the New Albany Floyd County Bus Drivers Association.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gardner. Administration is pleased to bring forward a tentative agreement, which we're recommending the board approval. It's a 2-year agreement in which essentially it'd be a 4% raise over the 2-year period, 4 in the first year, 0 in the second. A couple of things we adjusted in regards to routes. We changed the gifted and talented route like a quarter hour. We added the period 0 routes that we have been doing. It just wasn't part of the contract. We put that in there. And then insurance is status quo currently, but if we make an adjustment with the Teachers Association, we'll revisit that at that time as well. So with that, we'd recommend approval. Be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I tried to appreciate the board's patience. We had a tight timeline. I tried to send out information as soon as I had it available. And so sent you a yellow copy with the strikeouts of what the changes were, and Pam has a clean copy for you all to sign, assuming it gets approved. So
I want to vote for this, but you have recently informed me, I'm assuming the rest of the board knows too, that this fund is operating currently, I believe you said, in the budget book, $300,000 behind. And hang on, we're using rainy day money to supplement this. And you also told me that the rainy day fund has a balance that would cover basically only 1 month of operating expense for our school corporation. So before I vote yes to this, I want to know, how are we going to justify, or how are we going to give this raise and still, I mean, we're operating in a $300,000 deficit.
Right. The information that we passed out earlier, I believe, was 189. With these changes, it would bring it up to about 300,000. That's correct. Currently, the cash balance in the transportation fund is about $1.25 million. Okay, so you would have, you'd still have cash balance that you would be able to work off that would cover this for at least for the next 2 years for sure. We also have the ability which this board has done in the past of transferring funds from either the capital projects or from the bus replacement in the last couple of years, bus replacement, to the rainy day fund, and essentially back to the transportation fund, kind of a pass-through. This past year, we used $250,000 out on the rainy day fund to help support the transportation fund. That would be another option that the board would have. You're correct. We have about 1 month's operating expenses in rainy day, but we also have another month's operating expenses in cash balance in the general fund. So essentially, we have 2 months in regards to that. So I share your concern. That
I got the concern from you.
Right. I share your, and thank you. I share your concern that the transportation fund is deficit spending, and we have shared that with the Bus Drivers Association as well. And they've been really what's the word? Aware and understanding and of that situation. And it's not just a local issue here. It's really a statewide issue. In fact, we're talking about it this morning with the whole, it's the formula is basically tied to income increases, averages. Well, income's not rising that much across the state. Then you have property property tax caps, which that fund is basically funded through property taxes, and so now that cap's in place, that doesn't help. And then on top of that, you have protected taxes, which doesn't help. So we seem to take like 1 step forward and then 2 steps back at times. And so,
and don't forget diesel fuel.
And then diesel fuel, we obviously we can't control that now. Fortunately, it's been going down a little bit, but it's still triple what it was like 5 years ago. So, so this is a fund that we need to consistently keep an eye on. We've made a lot of operational changes, and we believe efficiencies with the way we purchase fuel and how we purchase in bulk, and looking at routes and how we can save cost by making those more efficient. We still have some more things we need to do. There's other options, but we're fortunate that we're not in the same situation as some of the school corporations up north who are actually doing away with transportation and or expanding walk zones or charging for athletic fees and things like that. We haven't gotten to that point here yet. But we believe that this contract as presented is manageable, and then we need to keep an eye on our financial situation for that particular fund. Our other funds, thankfully, we have, as Ms. Moyer said, we have made a tremendous turnaround in our general fund. We're back in the black, and fortunately, this legislative session, we're looking at additional new revenue in our general fund for the next 2 years, which is good. So, but it is a separate fund. Are we able to use general fund money for salaries and benefits of bus drivers? Only through technically. Let me double check. There actually used to be a statute that prohibited that specifically, right. But I think that was removed. I think you could. Then it's again of do you want to or not? Should you? Because the intent of the fund is to, just like food service, just like Prosser, is to be self-sufficient. We want to operate within those means the best we can, and that's what we're trying to do here as well, is operate within those meetings. Now, granted, we've had to use assistance periodically from the rainy day fund, but as things progress and circuit breaker, I wouldn't be surprised if we're back here years from now saying, hey, we have issues with transportation fund.
And then the other semantic issue on that law that says that no government entity can operate in deficit spending. Is that our corporation as a whole, or is the transportation separate from that? That
only applies to teacher bargaining. Okay. Which would apply to the general fund. Okay. Only.
Okay, so you got this, right? I mean, I want to give this to them, but
It's our recommendation.
Okay. Yeah. Fred, just say, I know you're asking for a 4% and then it'd be a 0%.
It's 4% over 2 years. It's front loaded. That's correct. It's okay. 4% in the first year.
What's the advantages or disadvantages between 4% and 0, or 2% and 2%?
You get a little more up front. There are pros and cons. You get more up front. Obviously, you get the 4 versus the 2, but from an hourly wage standpoint, you're not paying a 2%, the compounding 2% on 2% raise on a 2% raise in the year 2. So technically, the hourly wage is a little bit less in the year 2, but but the employee actually receives more funds.
And I know you said general fund separate, but to go to what Mrs. Lohmeyer was saying, we are getting ready to get to the point with the teachers, and I do want to see them get more than what they have gotten. And although directly, this wouldn't affect them, because it's a different fund, but if you start borrowing from other funds I just want to make sure that we're going to be able to do something for our teachers too.
There's most employee groups are very valuable assets to our school corporation, but they're also very different in duties and compensation. So a percent on, so for example, a bus driver is a much lower dollar amount than, say, a percent on a teacher's salary. So the difference is we are looking at additional revenue in the general fund over the next 2 years, where we're not necessarily in the transportation fund.
Ms. Weishart, I appreciate your comments and trying to make sure that we don't erode our financial position, because it's taken a lot of time and a lot of pain to get to where we are.
All right. Any other discussion? To hear a motion?
I move we approve.
Second.
Second. Was that Jessica?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jessica. All right. Any other discussion? Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart? Aye. Mrs. Gardenauer?
Aye. Passes 6-0.
And I would just like to thank the bus drivers team and our team and working together. So.
Yes, thank you. Okay. How many bus drivers do we have here tonight? Stand up. I appreciate it. Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for what you do. It's very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Okay. All right. There are some things that are on the agenda that the board requested that they be on. One of these, and I'm just going to go in order here. Consider posting audio of school board meetings on website 2 days after the meetings. I know, Mr. Hines, you weren't here. So, if you have any questions or anything that you want to say, please delve in. We have discussed it. I don't know if we need a motion or if we just go ahead and discuss first, or whatever you'd like to do.
My only comment would be, are we sure we want people to hear how we act all the time?
Yeah.
and if we are, that's okay with me.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to bring up one of the points that was brought up was the cost of capturing that and storing it and maintaining it, and then also the thought of somebody using it for the wrong purpose, taking a snippet and trying to put it out there as what would really went on if you don't take it in the whole. That's one of the reasons I'd preferred that the minutes are used, because it's more of what the decision was, as opposed to little snippets of information here and there that can be used the wrong way. And I honestly I know we made a lot of comparisons to the moving forward videos, but they're very different things, and when you have kids and teachers highlighted in moving forward, I think a lot of people want to hear that. Hearing us talk about budgets and stuff, I don't think there's the appetite for it out there, honestly. I know one of the other things that we had mentioned was, if we were going to go forward with it, was possibly doing it on a trial basis to see if there was any use of that. I personally think that the minutes are sufficient, and I think it's the best cost and value and the best use of our time and resources.
So to George's point, if we do decide to move forward, could we put a time limit on it as a trial basis and see what the usage is, and then agree tonight to revisit it at some future date to see whether it's worth the time, worth the expense, and make sure that it's not being abused in some way.
Okay. I guess, when you're talking about it being abused, I think it's a safety net because anybody out here could have their cell phone on and take little snippets of whatever we say. But if we have it on audio on the website, they can go back and listen to what really was said. So to me, it's more of a safety, when I say safety, accountability issue, that at least they can go back and hear the whole thing. Because anybody out here, any time can make little snippets that, record on your phone and put whatever you want. So to me, that's not a...
I don't think we could sit here tonight and say, here's how it might be abused.
Right.
But in 6 months, we might find out that there is a way it's being abused that we had never considered.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking for some point in the future to reevaluate and either affirm or decide to quit doing it.
And that's, if we could revisit in December or something, if these...
Well, and DJ, just for your sake, because you weren't here, I had mentioned we're not really doing anything new. They already can have access to the audio tape.
Right.
So it's really, and I apologize, I missed what's the cost. I didn't know there was a cost to put this on the website. What was the cost that was incurred for this, to add the audio to the website?
Well, won't there be some to actually put it on there? I mean, I can't imagine it just goes
on
on
there.
there.
That part. I don't know. I didn't know there would be a cost. I thought it was someone just downloading it.
Some staff time. I mean, somebody will have to access the website and post
download it. So it would just be that
close. It's a duty of probably a couple people. There'll be a technology component and probably a clerical component.
Okay.
And I know, George, last time you had said that should we have some sort of clearinghouse that the person actually has to give us their name and address, just like they speak to us, so that you know who it's going to, instead of just everybody can go down and download it. I mean, that was...
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily the answer, but I just wanted more of an accountability kind of thing. Even to your point, Becky, about somebody recording here, they're at least here, so they did get a chance to hear the whole conversation as opposed to the snippet. And I just think if you give absolutely no or require no accountability, then the chances of it being misused go up.
You do know that school corporations across the United States do this. They have audio recordings. They have it on TVs. So this is nothing new. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if you heard anything at the national conference. I haven't heard anything at any conferences about any of these things being abused in any way. This is nothing new. This is what school corporations are doing.
I don't hear anybody saying they're going to vote against it.
No, okay.
I hear them saying, let's do it in a judicious manner where we're changing a policy. We don't know the consequences. There are always unexpected consequences to any change. If there are some, let's be open-minded about maybe going back and rethinking what we're about to do.
I guess what I disagree on is that having to log in and give an email address. I don't understand that part. I don't understand that.
Well, I kind of like the idea of giving it a trial run.
Yeah.
I do too. And
I do too.
Instead of December, I would say maybe go till June, just because December, it's really, parents are not thinking about school right now. So really, you're looking at August and December, and I don't know that that's really enough time to measure it. And then we just stick it on the website, and then we find out how many people go to it, see if anybody abuses it, and then we revisit it and adapt based on what.
And and be made aware. I don't know who would be. Brad, would you be over this? Probably. This is technology.
Well, it's going to fall between me and Bruce.
Okay.
I mean, there's a technology piece, but
Right.
then there's a central superintendent, secretary, facilitating the board action piece. But
Right.
yeah, I'll probably end up with it before it's all said and done.
Okay. All right. I agree, to take a look at it and how long, but, would be next a year from now, or is it sooner than that, or?
Well, it could be much ado about nothing. It could be no ado about something that's really important, and I just think we need to kind of watch it for a while.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Do we have a motion?
So I'll make a motion that we post the audio of our meetings to the website as it states in the action item on the agenda, and that we do it on a trial basis for 1 year, and we revisit it at the 1 year mark.
Unless there's a significant abuse in the meantime. If we see, don't even say abuse, say a significant problem that.
And the board reserves the right to change the year date.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Did you get all that?
Of course you do.
She does on audio.
Oh, there you go.
I second the motion.
Okay, Donna seconds. Any other discussion? Okay, Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
No.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart? Aye. Ms. Gardenauer?
Aye. It passes 5-1. Okay. All right, I'll be anxious to see how it goes. All right, thank you. The next one was consider posting any and all supporting documentation sent to board for board meetings. I think that's something that it wouldn't be all documentation, because we were talking about not including the staffing report and also any bargaining. And also, I mean, obviously anything that's talked about in the executive sessions, that wouldn't be posted on that. But other than that, I know I've kept saying these people's names, and I wanted to, what in the world did I do with it? Okay. Well, and these people may not even be here anymore, but it was Joe Hogue, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the Indiana Public Access Counselor, Stephen Key, the Executive Director and General Counsel, Hoosier State Press Association, and Matt Light, Chief Counsel of the Advisory Division, Office of the Indiana Attorney General. They're the ones who told me that once it's sent to us as board members, that's public information. You can put draft all over it, whatever you want to do, but as soon as it comes to us, that is public information. So, any discussion, any motion, or any discussion first, or what would not be in it, or?
I don't feel qualified to give a specific list of the things that should not be in it.
Okay.
But I think there should be a list of specific things that are not included that ought to go along with whatever this policy is.
And I think we need to have a legal counsel or look at that list to make sure that we have a checklist of what would and would not be appropriate and follow those guidelines.
I think, we can do that. I'm wondering if we would be covered if we said no collective bargaining, no staffing report, and no topics that are discussed in executive session, because those are all items that we don't discuss in public anyway. So that kind of I would think would cover us. So if we're going to get legal, maybe just ask if we can have it read like that. I mean,
kind of a checklist of things to.
Those are the only things I can think of. Go ahead.
I mean, I would agree. That's all that we can think of.
Right. They may
but
think
our
of
council may think of other things that we ought to have included before we really
Mr. Woodard?
put it in place.
I assume Mr. Woodard. Okay.
So what, you want to table this until, Becky, you can talk to Mr. Woodard and then bring it back to the next meeting for
action?
Can you
just word it to where that we have a checklist of items that will not be included in the documentation based on legal advice or something of the sort like that?
Yeah, but if you do that, I don't want to be running every agenda through legal each time.
No. But if you have a checklist of items that should never be put on there.
Right. I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, if you want to word it that way, that you, to that extent.
This is, if I could enter, this may not be on your point, but given the last conversation and this one, I think one thing that the board might want to consider would be to have an in-service, if you will, or have Mr. Woodard brief you and educate you as to what constitutes the Indiana Open Door Records Act, because it's there for a very good reason, for many of the reasons we're talking about this recording and all this kind of stuff. And I just don't know what level of understanding you all have of what's already in place for the taxpayer, the citizen, the parent. I mean, all these, it's there and it works, and I would just offer that observation.
That's a very good idea.
I disagree. I don't think we need a work session with John Woodard. I don't.
It could be however you want. I mean, because both of these items relate to the distribution of public records, and there's Indiana code that already covers all this.
Again, this is once it's sent to us, it is public information.
That's correct.
Well, and you've already talked to an attorney. And if we state it so that bargaining, staffing, and items that are covered by executive session, I mean, really, that's the laws that we are governed by anyway, as a board.
Isn't there a compromise between having a work session with an attorney and, like what DJ said, we know what we know, but maybe there's some things we don't know.
Okay. Do you want me to set up a meeting with John Woodard?
I would
and
feel
talk with
more
him?
comfortable
Okay.
with that,
Okay.
just to cover everybody.
With just Becky talking to him, or all of us have to be there?
Becky could talk to, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I trust Becky, and she could relay the information to us. It may be very simple.
Right.
Okay.
But it may not be. Who knows?
Okay. Well, maybe I could have that information by the next time
Or
we
we
meet.
could do it in executive session in a half hour before the next board meeting with John in executive session, because it's staff development of the board, which is an executive session topic.
That's a good idea.
Okay. You'd say that's staff development?
It's a board development, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is executive session topic.
Okay.
That way everybody hears, everybody can ask questions.
Right.
Okay. Well, then I'll make a
Then we
motion
can-
on this item that we table it until the July meeting.
Okay.
And then that'll give us time to gather the
Okay.
semantics.
Will you, who we contact John? Dr. Hibbard,
We'll
you
do
want
it,
to?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. You need to.
I need a second.
I'm sorry. She
To
did make a
table it.
motion to table it. We do need a second to table that.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Jessica, okay. We have a motion and a second to table, to consider posting any and all supporting documentation sent to board for board meetings. Pam, you want to go ahead and call the roll?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Mrs. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines? Ms. Weishart? Aye. Ms. Gardner?
Aye. Passes 6-0. We also have on approval for school resource officer at Prosser. We have had discussion about this before. I don't know whether there's any more information from Dr. Snyder or Mr. Briscoe.
I think I could share some thoughts.
Okay.
After our last meeting, it just so happened Bill Weishart and I were in a meeting with SROs, both the Sheriff's Department and the City Police. And from conversations there, even though that was not the topic, it was evident that we probably should have more discussion with the City Police. So Fred McWhorter and I met with Chief Bailey. We talked about the possibility of an SRO at Prosser. As a matter of fact, we also talked about possibility of that person coming here to the ESC, because nobody covers the students here also. So, and I know that was a big concern of the SROs in both our fall and April meeting.
Really?
It all comes down basically to manpower and budgets. And I think where we left is we have a great partnership. We've always had a strong partnership. And I think that the corporation's interested in moving forward if we could have the same type of arrangement in the past. But it's going to come down to whether the police department has the manpower and their budget. So we talked about getting together, having more meetings, and maybe right before the January 1 of 2016, which is their next budget, and possibly meet sort of in the fall and to see if that's a possibility to get one mid-year.
Have you had any discussion with Frank Loop, the sheriff?
I've not, because that right now Prosser is with their jurisdiction is now with Prosser, so I have not had that specific. It used to be at one time Prosser was under the county that they made runs to, but right now it's with the New Albany Police.
At minimal,
to bypass the police when it's their jurisdiction.
well, at minimal, I would like to see the Highland Hills Middle School SRO move to Prosser for full-time, so that Prosser has a full-time. If we don't have the manpower, if Todd Bailey doesn't have the manpower, then Floyd Central and Highland Hills share, but that we have a full-time SRO at Prosser.
We could have more discussions. I think that would take, to do that again, that's the jurisdiction of the city, so I think it would probably take some more discussion with both the sheriff and the police.
And it is my understanding that Mr. Loop has got an idea for that. So,
I think everybody's in favor. I think when we talked to the chief, it's not something
he wanted to. He just like T said, it's not going to happen before 2016. Is basically what.
And I think Sheriff Loop has a different idea.
Yeah, Sheriff Loop would be willing to place someone, but we would have to. I know they were going to hire 4 people. He would hire a 5th if we paid for it. That's what it boiled down to. Of course, they do have jurisdiction
over the county.
They do.
They're
sheriffs, so they have jurisdiction
is this
everywhere.
Discussion time.
Yeah.
What's the compelling event that makes an SRO at Prosser so significant at this time?
To me, what's always been significant to me, I'm bringing it up because I think that with it being a high school element, high school age kids, we're bringing in students from multiple counties, and actually in some of the drug testing conversations we've had, it was I can't remember who said it, administrator or one of the SROs said that if the teacher suspects a kid of being under the influence, they take that child to the SRO. Well, if there's not an SRO at Prosser, what are you going to, you know what I mean? So, but more of it is a concern for me because we have students coming from multiple counties, and we've had.
It's also more open to the public.
Right.
Yeah.
The cosmetology, they come in. Well, we
entrances
got that building.
that are not guarded.
The restaurant's open, so people can come in and.
I think that's a very good point.
We haven't had an event there, or have we?
Well, I was talking to Mac.
I'm unaware.
Mac Spainhour last week, and there was a fight there. I mean, to me, which would be more need of an SRO, Prosser or Highland Hills Middle School?
That
I think
I agree with that logic. I understand
Mine's
that.
more preventative,
right,
instead of reactive.
Right.
If that helps. I mean, that's my position.
And isn't Highland Hills entrance a little more secured? There's fewer ways to get in and out. The public doesn't come in and out as freely.
Right. Truth be told, I want one there too, but
yeah,
I don't want to get greedy.
Is there any way that, until such time that there was money or grants or whatever, that just like Hazelwood and New Albany shared an SRO, is there a time that Floyd Central and Highland Hills could share an SRO and then Frank put the SRO at Prosser? Or, well, because that's a share. Who's out at Highland Hills? Who's the SRO?
I can't remember his name.
Name will come to me.
I just wanted to see if the board has the same, what the board's feeling is on having an SRO as a priority at Prosser, which is why I had it on as an action item. Because I'd like to make a motion that we have a full-time SRO at Prosser beginning the school year. And then the administration can figure out if we don't have the money, then move or share or whatever. But
it would not be my recommendation to take an SRO from 1,600 students at Highland Hills to move it to Prosser. That wouldn't be. That's the first I'm hearing of it.
How many students do we have at Prosser?
About 700 at a time, Alan? Yeah.
So that's 700 in the morning, 700 in the afternoon?
Yes.
That's 1,400.
Well, my recommendation is that we have a full-time SRO at Prosser, and then the administration goes the route and figures out how they're going to do it, if the board so desires to have that.
I don't feel an urgency about it. I do think if I were prioritizing where you had them, that the high schools would be probably the best. Well, maybe junior high students.
I know. I want them at all of them.
But if we're not having a problem, and so this puts me in the reactive camp, not the proactive camp. If we're not having a problem, I would rather see the money spent in enhancing what's happening in the classroom rather than trying to prevent a potential problem.
Okay, well then if it's based on priority, I guess we need to examine, have we had more fights and altercations at Prosser or at Highland Hills? I mean, is there a problem at Highland Hills?
Or if we've had more at a place where there was an SRO than a school that didn't have an SRO.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe we put one there and there's really no prevention. The same fights occur. I don't know. My personal feeling is it's not an urgent need. If there is no crisis, then it's proactive, and that's fine. If there isn't a crisis, then we're kind of manufacturing one and manufacturing a position that we might not need.
Well, is there like I said, I agree with Ms. Weishart. It's being proactive because you have how many different schools are coming? Teenage kids are driving there or whatever from different schools.
Well, in essence, we're proactive at Highland Hills too. I mean,
yeah.
Are we
the
concerned?
fact you've got one there is probably cut down on whatever fights would break out.
Probably, but we don't. I mean,
Yeah, you don't know until you take them all off.
And I guess if it's okay to hear from Alan, I know we've had some police officers there now, right? Has that helped, Kathy? Has that helped in anything? Do you see a change?
Were they there when the fight broke out?
Were they there when the fight broke out a week or so ago, or? Okay. Okay.
Has it helped? I mean, it's never negative to have a police officer in your schools.
Right.
No, we very much appreciate it, and it's been very well received. I don't know if it's prevented anything. That would be hard to tell. Mm-hmm. Most of the SRO, one of the primary responsibilities or roles of an SRO is to build relationships with students, and so these gentlemen have done a nice job with that. But it's the SRO it's not going to be a negative. It's really just timing, and Bill was talking about possibly in the spring. That would be comfortable, and I think from Kathy and Amar's perspective that if we could roll into something like that, would even be very comfortable. The current coverage we have, it's not the whole day, but it's a pretty good coverage when the students are dropped off, and then the real issue is that 2 hours for us between AM and PM sessions. So that's been a really nice addition and nice coverage. So, but I'm not sure about which altercation. I apologize. It's not coming to me. I don't think so, because I don't recall I don't recall the SRO being involved in any actual police duties.
I just have a question. If you took the one away from Highland Hills and there was an emergency that we needed to attend to at Highland Hills, is it too much to expect that the SRO from Floyd Central could go over there to handle that?
We do that right now at all of our schools. Our SROs are very cooperative when they hear to go other places. I think we're all in agreement. We would like to see SRO coverage in all of our secondary buildings full time. There's no doubt about that. I would suggest you give us, and I can tell you, Mark Spurgeon's the name of the SRO.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
So I can tell you it was problematic before when an officer went down and there was sharing, and I think Rhonda can attest to that. Middle schools only tried to share, and Janet Page is here and trying to share between Hazelwood and New Albany. It's just not effective if it's not on a regular basis as much. I would suggest give us time. You mentioned Frank Loop. Give us time to have more discussions with the sheriff and the police chief and see if we can come back with something.
Do you know why the SRO was taken out of Prosser? Because we used to have one there.
I don't remember at the time.
Well, I think the grant ran out, and then the city didn't want to pay.
Retired too.
Yeah.
Mr. Hoagland.
They didn't have a replacement. Yeah.
I really don't know.
So what happened at the same time was Mr. Briscoe, he retired and then the grants were in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was sort of a combination of things.
Okay.
I think everybody's together. I think the police department, sheriff's department, and the corporations together, and that we think it's a need and something we want to do. I just think give us a couple months here to figure it out.
Do we want to table this until August and have a report back?
Why? Glad to report back.
If the corporation wants to do it, it's just a matter of time with the personnel. Why do we need it to take an action tonight?
I just want to make sure someone's there when school starts. That was the only reason why I put it as an action item, is so that we can do whatever we need to now to make sure that it's there then. But now I hear the board saying, let's wait till then and figure it out.
I don't think that's what Bill's saying.
I think we're saying we're good with having immediate conversations and see if we can figure it out. So.
But if there's not a person,
I think we're on agreement.
If there's not a person when school starts because they haven't been able to figure it out personnel-wise, what are we going to?
I'm not happy, but okay.
Well,
again, I'm just not happy, but that's okay.
Well, and then that goes back, and I know that you don't recommend it, but again, there's an SRO shared between New Albany High School and Hazelwood. Why wouldn't you share an SRO between Highland Hills and Floyd Central? Okay.
Well, and the other predicament we're going to be in, and maybe Jenny, you'll talk about that, but is with the road closing.
A piece you don't see, and I'm happy to have, is that our SRO is on the SWAT team. Mm-hmm. He's responsible for shooter training. Pulls him out of the building several days a month. I can't tell you exactly how many, but multiple. If we pull both of the guys out, you're leaving 3,000 kids in a closed road with no police. That's not a good scenario. So if you want to make a change, let's wait till the road opens. I'm on needles and pins about safety issues and access with that road closed as it is. But the SROs are very good to let each other know when they have training, and they go back and forth all the time. But there are many days when our officer is out of the building, and we really rely on the Highland Hills personnel to come to our aid. So that's a piece that you don't see, but we do in the building.
They're vital. I get it. They're vital.
Right. And again, then why did we share at New Albany and Hazelwood?
I think we only did it because somebody was out, though. I don't think it was something we wanted to do.
The current agreement that you guys worked out now, like what Alan was talking about, the folks that are coming over there during those segments, well, school's out now, but how they were coming over a couple times during the day, is that an option when we start school?
Yeah, I think
just say it, Janet. We don't share currently with Hazelwood, right? Okay.
No.
Not now, but
no,
we
you
did.
used to, but we don't, right? But is that an option? If we don't, if we can't,
that agreement's still in place. Yeah, that was the intent. Yeah,
that's not going away.
Right.
Oh, I thought that was just to get us through the end of the school year.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
That's continuing until we can get some.
They would be very receptive to continue that, I'm sure. Contract with them on their off-duty time, so I would anticipate that we continue that.
If I can jump in on, I think we just need time to talk with Frank, because there was a, hey, they can do with the city, hey, they can do it, they can't do it, and then so when we actually came down to brass tacks and we sat down and say, hey, we're ready to do it, can you do it? Then it's like, well, we really can't like to do it, but we really can't because we don't have the manpower stuff until 16. We may have that same conversation with Frank, I don't know, because we haven't talked to him yet. So he may have people, he may not have people, but we haven't had that conversation yet.
And if they're not there, we can't order them to be there. I mean, you have to have that conversation, right?
Correct. Yeah. It's not that we don't want one. It's they don't have one that we're aware of yet.
Do we have a July meeting?
Then in August.
That's what I thought, but I was wondering why we were waiting till August. Can we just have it, discuss it again in July?
I know you
Does that give you time? As long as we can have what we have now.
We'll have a discussion. I mean, again, it's something the corporation favors and wants to move on. It's just a matter if we have the manpower to get that.
So what's the pleasure? Why, table or?
My question is, why further discussion? The corporation wants to move ahead. They're willing to move ahead as soon as there's personnel. Why do we need to discuss it any further?
Right.
They're trying to do what.
Okay. Well, then they can report back to us.
Yeah. When they have that conversation.
Here's our progress. Here's our hurdle. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Next is the approval drug testing policy. If it's okay, if it's okay if I jump ahead here a little bit, I know this is out of order. I know it's on for discussion about human resources and marketing. I think
Yeah, I'm going to ask that be tabled.
That be tabled.
Or am I doing that now, or are we going out of order?
we're jumping ahead if that's okay, so we can get that out of the way.
Okay. Well, under discussion items, I'll make a motion that we table the human resources and the marketing discussion because I want Jan to be here. Jan and I have talked, and she has questions too, and I just want her to be a part of this. So I make a motion to table those two items.
Have a second?
Second that motion.
Donna seconds. Any discussion? Pam?
Mrs. Knable?
Aye.
Mr. Gaunt?
Aye.
Ms. Corbett?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Ms. Weishart?
Aye.
Ms. Gardner?
Aye. I know I went out of order there, but since we're talking about the drug testing policy, but I know Bill has some discussion, so we kind of just put this all together. And Bill, you want to talk about this?
Oh, sure. Actually, the curriculum department's going to lead this. Mrs. Day, I don't know, Mr. Jensen, Dr. Jensen, Dr. Rose, are you going to be?
This is what we voted on the consent.
Good evening again. What we try to do is kind of give you a synopsis of what we're doing in our school system at each level as a prevention and drug awareness. So hopefully you got a chance to look through your packet and saw that information. But we are a partnership with our place on several different levels. And I'll let Michelle talk a little bit about the elementary, then Rhonda can talk a little bit about the middle, and then we're going to talk about some of the things we're going to look at changing or proposing discussion for next year.
As Dr. Jensen said, we've had an ongoing partnership with Mary Beth Wolf and Our Place, and they've been very, very helpful with our guidance counselors in a lot of areas, but especially in this area. We've got a couple schools that this upcoming year we'll have them in place as well, but in working with our guidance counselors as well as our elementary principals, you can see we have several interventions in place, education information programs in place for our elementary students in second grade as well as fourth grade, and then we have after school programs in two of our schools. We talked with Mary Beth about there were so many children that wanted to participate after school. We had a waiting list, and we weren't able to accommodate them. So we see that as being really positive and want to work with her on ways, how do we accommodate all the families that want their children to have these experiences. So the programs that we have in place now are Footprints for Life. That's during the school day, so we can ensure that all children have that experience. That's with second grade students, and that's in conjunction with our guidance counselors. And I do want to say very publicly and to the board, I really, really appreciate appreciate having full-time elementary guidance counselors. What they do in a proactive way, in an early childhood, early intervention way, is amazing, and not all school districts do that, and I think that speaks volumes for us in our efforts to educate the whole child and making sure all of their needs are met. In 4th grade, during the school day, we have the life skills course. And then in 4th grade, an after-school opportunity. Again, this is for groups of children, so this isn't inclusive of all the children, but we offer after-school rocks. And then in 3rd and 4th grade after school, new directions. The weekly guidance lessons are in place. And next year, I want to work with the elementary principals. We have 4 family nights throughout the year. Those have been on an academic focus. But for this next year, we want to look at partnering with Our Place to do some more social, emotional type presentations, projects on family nights when families come into the school. We also communicate with parents by email, and Mary Beth Wolf shared some possibilities and opportunities that we can share by email, and kids in elementary school are still good to take things home in their backpacks. That wanes off, as Rhonda can talk to you about, but we can even send things home in their backpacks just to try to promote that knowledge, that information, and that awareness. So that's what we're doing at the elementary level. Any questions?
Okay, and then you can see on the form what we're doing in the middle school. What happens when kids come to us in 5th grade in that health curriculum? It spirals up all the way through 5, 6, 7, and 8 for every kid that has PE and then that semester of health. We knew we needed additional help, and Mary Beth has helped us at grade 7. So there's a 10-week course, which was a little bit much for us. So Mary Beth cut that down to 7 or 8 sessions where her staff members go to the middle school, join up with one of our health teachers to do a harder punch at coping skills, etc. But what I would tell you from my 30 years of being in here with middle school students would be this. There are 2 things, and it all comes down in my mind to prevention. I would be the first one to tell you, is there an issue with kids today still? Absolutely. I would tell you from a middle school perception that seems to be more with alcohol with our children as they move on in to other forms of drugs. But the things that I have found are this: if there is family support, and what I mean by that is one adult person who may not be a member of that family. For me in my years at Scribner and at Hazelwood, it was an auntie or a grandparent, but one solid, safe person that has a knowledge base and knows what to do to help is critical. So that's why you'll see Louis put it down here under the proposed additions. We actually started this year with Mary Beth in Our Place, and then with a group called Parent Operation, where we're having sessions for parents. Then the second thing is, it's just teaching kids those coping skills. We go to these other things when we don't have somebody and we don't have some skills as kids in really difficult times to make it. So as much as our money and resources and time that we can put toward the prevention of this, it's the same thing for us in the middle, just like it is with a bullying program. In preventing it is where I would certainly plead with you to help us there.
And actually at the high school level, we just continue the curriculum up to our grades 9 and 10. At New Albany High School, they teach health grade 9. At Floyd Central, it's grade 10. And so we partner with Our Place, and they have an individual comes in and works with our health teachers. And it's all about awareness. Rhonda did a nice job of kind of summarizing that, creating an awareness and helping kids make good choices. So when you're dealing with that stress, how do you cope with it? Instead of turning it to a drug or alcohol, you find another measure to deal with that and cope with that. So that's the key, and that's kind of what we've created with our curriculum at the health classes at the high school level. Some of the things we want to introduce next year is all our schools have to review the emergency preparedness plan every semester with their staff. So we're going to partner with Our Place this year and ask Our Place to come in and do a 30-minute awareness with our staff as part of that emergency preparedness plan. So that's something new this coming year, and we're going to ask our administrators probably on a collaboration day to review the emergency preparedness plan, but then Our Place will be there, Mary Beth will be there, one of our counselors doing an awareness awareness of on drug prevention. We're also looking at our policies. We review our policies every year. Currently, our suspension for possession of drugs is usually a 5-day suspension, and we're going to look at maybe reducing that suspension instead of 5 days, reducing it to maybe 3 days out of school. We also, in the past, if you're involved in a drug-related incident and you're under the possession of it, it was the expense of the family to provide the counseling. And we're looking into the future, maybe that's something the school district should do. If you're involved in an incident that first time, instead of you going to a counselor agency that's been approved by our school corporation, we provide that for you at the expense of the school district. A student who's involved in transmission has been in the past automatic expulsion. We're not looking at removing that, but in the past when a kid was expelled underneath that infraction, there was no drug program at all. So we would definitely put something there if a kid is involved in his second offense, a repeated offender, or is involved in a transmission of drugs or alcohol on school property. So those are some of the things we're looking at. I think Michelle talked about the newsletter that our place has that we would send out on a weekly basis if it was appropriate through email or in backpacks. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Questions?
I'm very, very happy with all that you're doing, and Mary Beth helping. Absolutely. Don't disagree with anything that you're doing. I think it's fantastic.
I have a question. My question's regarding you taking away the expense from the family or the parent for the counseling and shouldering that as a school corporation. What's the rationale for that change?
Well, there's a couple. In the past, DJ, Mr. Hines, we would say, in lieu of being expelled, if you attend a counseling agency that's recognized by the school corporation, then we would not expel you, but you're at the expense. Some parents just wouldn't do it, and the kid would be expelled. And really, for us, it's about helping the parents. Some of them don't know where to go, even though we have a list of agencies, and some have trouble financially because it's not covered in their health insurance, currently health insurance. So we thought it's probably best service for us that if we would provide that expense.
I'm going to follow up with that too, DJ, because I would say maybe, let's say there were 30 kids in a middle school that might go through this program. I would tell you that at least half of them, the parents who are struggling anyway, or the caregiver would say, I'm sorry, Rhonda, I don't have the funds. I can't do 10 sessions of this, or you'll just have to expel them. That pops them over into Ready for Life. So we had even talked about, can we cover that? Can we work with Mary Beth at our place? Can we work with our own counselors who would be interested in doing that in a safe, secure environment before we throw families out into finding another institution to get involved? That's why we talked about that instead of 5 days out, could we make that 3 with a good, universal, strong program to really help? We just say, boy, you've done bad things, you're in trouble, sorry for your luck that your parents can't pay for this, we'll see you next year. That's what we're trying to not let happen anymore.
I would encourage you to have some balance between those who can't afford it and need to be treated compassionately because of their financial situation, and those that can afford it and need to be more responsible. And I think financially you'll hold those people, the people that can afford it, more responsible. And so maybe not make a blanket policy, but have some criteria of where they fall financially.
I was just wondering.
Just a thought.
Some of the agencies will do a sliding scale based on your income.
Well, that's
But I mean, to have them pay, if they can pay for it, they should be paying for it.
Yeah.
Or is there a possibility to getting type of grant funding for things such as that for kids who are?
Actually, Mrs. Corbett, we have not pursued that. These are all preliminary discussions.
Right.
And some of our administrators have been made aware of some of the direction. I know when I met with the assistant principals at the high schools, we talked about going from 5 to 3. What about us providing the counseling instead of the parents and so forth? So we're just right now starting exploring changes for the upcoming year.
I was just curious because we have, Austin being the epicenter of the drug problem, if there isn't possibly any opportunities for us to get some help in that area for kids that need counseling.
Right.
I'm just
and
curious.
It's a point well taken. Yes, I'm not
point,
sure,
DJ.
And I can only speak for the 3 middle schools, DJ, that we have faced that in the past. I think people that are capable financially to do so have stepped up every single time. But I hear your point. It's well taken, and if they can be responsible, we certainly want to lead them to be that way.
But I love the intent behind what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
because you don't want the kid to suffer because the parents aren't making very good choices.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I love it.
Are you two in favor of drug testing? Does that go hand in hand with what you all are trying to do? Would that help you?
We actually like the idea of the education about prevention and awareness. For us, we think that's the better bang for our time and resources at this time.
So it's a matter of there's a limited amount of money, so instead of the drug testing, you would wish the money would be for the education part of it, like maybe it couldn't be both?
And then Mary Beth's probably the expert in the room, and she probably could attest to this, that it's really about, if you want to address the issue in your community, it's all about education, education, education.
And Jessica, for me, if you're asking that question, I would say I see such an intensive need for more help, prevention-wise, that if it's an either, I would definitely lean toward the prevention. I also know it's been years since I've been at a high school, Avon High, and then when we first came here to Prosser, but kids are smart and seem to learn our system just like they do sometimes with drug dogs. So sometimes student would know, ooh, we've had a drug testing, so honestly, usage can go up following that sometimes because kids feel safe to do that. I think I mentioned before, alcohol seems to be the beginning issue for us at the middle. I'm not sure that that's seen there in the drug testing. Mary Beth could help us there. So definitely for me, I see so many things we could be doing a better job of with additional funding on prevention that I think would truly make a difference.
Or getting help instead of being punished.
Yes.
Correct.
And I'm not saying it's either or, but that's part of your plan is to
that's
help
right.
them if they are.
Yes.
Sometimes it's nice to have a carrot and a stick, but
Right. I think that's the way, and like I said, I appreciate all this, being a ex-social worker and probation officer, a probation and parole officer now.
Resources.
Resources. The drug testing is not for punishment. You know, it would not be for punishment. It would be, I think, you know, to make kids aware. And like I said, I know we can go on the internet all day, you know, and there's some people who say, oh my gosh, it doesn't do any good. There's other people that will say, yes, it's really good. So, you know, it depends on what the last article that you read. But with, you know, if we find out if there are some kids that we suspect or whatever that are using drugs, then get them the help. It's not to punish, but it's to get them the help. That's the bottom line. You know, nobody wants to punish these kids, but prevention is the best thing. And to say that there's not a drug problem, I think, is being very naive. Very naive. Yes, there is. Absolutely, there is.
Are we moving on to that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you. I'm very happy with what you guys are doing. I'd asked for the drug testing policy to be an action item just because the board's had conversation about it several times, and I've kind of narrowed it down to just two specific areas. We can take this, I can make two separate motions, or really I just want to get discussion from the board before I make a motion, but my angle with this was to complement the identification awareness as a preventative tool, to have policy so that our administration may administer drug testing if they deemed suspicion of a student under the influence. So it wasn't, you shall drug test 50 people a month. It was completely a policy based on the discretion of the administration if they have a kid that they're under suspicion. Now, with this identification awareness, our teachers are going to be more aware of what to look for. So to me, this complements what you're doing, because to have a policy that if they identify, okay, now what do we do about it? If there's a policy that says you can drug test on this suspicion, then that's what we should do, and then not necessarily the punitive. My angle with the Prosser is the clinical students. I gave you guys all a piece of paper before. Just this weekend we had a Prosser pharmacy student arrested for maintaining a common nuisance and possession of marijuana. This is a pharmacy student who has access to pills and whatever that machine is that you fill them that. And I'm not saying this to be mean towards a student. I don't want to bring the name up. It's public record, but it lends support to what I'm trying to say. These clinical students are going into medical settings. We do require them to have a TB test prior to starting their clinicals. Mr. Taylor was kind enough to speak to his clinical staff, and they are very much, from what you told me, in support of this, to have some kind of a drug policy so that if they suspect, they can, but moreover, it would be a requirement, if I could make it such, a requirement, just like the TB test is a requirement, then that within 30 days of starting your clinicals, you must have pass a drug test. So that's the one angle with the processor, and then the other is, I brought, Clarksville has a policy right now, other schools have it too, but the other policy would be to be able to have the discretion to drug test student drivers and extracurricular activities, because that's what the law allows. I think based on the other discussions we had, the law does not allow you to just randomly drug test anybody in your school.
Right.
But they do allow you to drug test if you suspect student drivers and then extracurricular activities. So those were the two elements of the policy that I was interested in my motion.
And and again, I know Dr. Hibbert sent out some things about expense. I would like to see the drug policy there. Just the mere fact that it's there, it's going to make kids think. It's like, wow, I could be tested at a time. I don't care if you tested one kid a semester. I don't care. As long as it was on there, that would make kids think that are playing, they're in the band or football or whatever. I think it would be a deterrent. It's a tool. It is a tool. That's all it is.
So let me ask Bill or Brad, because they seem to know the policies better than anybody. Can we not drug test someone that we have a suspicion that they're using now?
Right now at the high schools, if there is a real suspicion on the spot, we would go right to the SRO usually, and they would start dealing with it.
So what's the difference between the two?
They go to the SRO. We don't have a policy where we test them. The SRO deals with it, and we don't have an SRO at Prosser. So if there's a suspected drug use at Prosser, what are you going to do?
What do we do?
That's when they would call in.
We'd call it in.
They would call in either the SRO at Floyd Central or at New Albany. We'd come out and administer the test.
But we currently don't have policy that allows us to test, do we? I don't think so.
We do not have policy.
Not our administrators.
Yes.
But if it was a random test, we wouldn't have our administrators do that anyway. We would hire a company to do that.
But you're not talking about a random test. You're talking about someone under suspicion.
Yes, sir. Right. Correct.
That's not what you said about clinicals. Clinical, you said you're going to, after a month, you're going to randomly select them. And
clinicals, I said, should be a prerequisite prior to beginning your clinicals, as is the TB testing.
Different issues.
Yes, sir.
Different issues.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
sir.
And you have access to drugs when you're in clinicals.
But not to marijuana.
No.
Okay.
You don't have access to marijuana.
Well, that's what the girl got caught for, marijuana. She didn't get caught for other drugs.
So we really already have a policy that covers what you want. If we have a student that we suspect is using drugs, they're detained.
We do not have a policy for the school to test them. What we would do is get the SRO involved right now.
So that's under the law.
We have a mechanism.
Yes.
We have a mechanism that allows the student to be tested if we suspect.
Right.
Correct. And what's inadequate about that procedure?
Well, my understanding was that we didn't have a policy that allowed us to do it if we had suspicion. We take them to the SRO, who is law enforcement, and then it's a law enforcement issue. And then it is punitive.
Okay.
But it is against the law.
But it's punitive.
Okay.
Yeah, then it becomes punitive.
The police would be involved.
We want it
But
punitive.
breaking the law is breaking the law. I mean, why would you not want them to, I mean...
That's what we've been talking about is
Yeah,
preventative.
and not being punitive.
Yeah.
If we want to be preventative and not punitive,
So
why
if
involve
if
SRO?
we test them, then there'd be no police involved. And I meant punitive as far as being suspended or expelled. I wasn't even thinking about criminal things. I meant punishment as far as the school goes.
Well, yeah, there would be punishment. Okay, so just so everybody knows, the punishment is this for those students that don't do drugs. And we have several students in our schools that don't do drugs at our high schools.
Mine doesn't.
True.
And so the punishment comes from, and next year your son may get his license or the year after get his license. So the punishment comes from the fact that he has, in order to drive to New Albany High School in the future, he would have to get a number, sticker for his car, which would correspond with the parking lot spot that he would have to park at. And even if he chooses to go really early in the morning and get the spot because he knows it's going to rain right up by the door, he can't choose to do that. He has to go to his numbered spot. Because you see, in random drug testing, if you get caught or you test positive, then you can no longer drive to school anymore. And so every once in a while, then, as an administrative team, we have to check the parking lots to make sure that Bruce, who tested positive, is no longer driving to school. And the only way to do that is to have a huge parking lot. It's just like a seating chart in your classroom. That's what it is. And we have to check that all the time. So kids are punished even though they aren't violating the law. They're following school rules. They're not doing drugs. I mean, that's just one instance. The other piece comes from whether you do extracurricular or parking or student driving, etc. If they do test positive, they are punished. They'll lose so many games, they'll lose the right to drive, etc. But there's a huge administrative cost to this. And Mary Beth, I know last time you were here, you stated that in your findings that drug testing is not the way to go. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, the last time I was here, we talked about it a little bit, and yeah, like you said, you can go on the internet and whatever who did the latest research, but the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is one of our largest federal resources regarding drug and alcohol abuse, and also the National Institute on Drug Abuse, have both said that this requires much more study, that the amount of resources put into it may not produce the results that we really want. There's a couple of things that happen. First of all, kids know what you're testing for, so oftentimes they'll jump off and they'll start using some other drugs, unfortunately, that can be more damaging, specifically when we start talking about synthetic marijuana or synthetic stimulants. Those aren't on a typical drug testing panel. Those have to be done separately, and it's a separate expense. So kids figure that out. If they still want to get high, then they find something else to get high that they know is not on the panel. The other thing, we've talked about alcohol. That's not on a standard drug testing panel. So if you're doing it in a preventative way, that's not going to be something that kids are tested for. And unfortunately, in our area, alcohol is still the #1 drug of choice. Marijuana is #2. And I think that, you know, we've even talked about like hair follicle testing being a way to go, because in that way you test for everything. And discussion has been on that, is that unfortunately you could catch kids who maybe did go to a party. Maybe they experimented with marijuana or alcohol that one time and said, you know what, this isn't for me, made a decision not to use that again, but 2 weeks later gets called in that random screen, and they're going to get tested. They're going to show positive the same way as the student who's out smoking pot every weekend. So that's a concern. I do think I'm hearing a little bit different change in language from the last time when we talked about. We went from just random testing all the kids that are in extracurricular or whatever to now I'm hearing for suspicion. And I think last time you heard me say that for suspicion is a realistic way to go. That gives you an opportunity to help break denial of the parent, because every administrator in this building knows when they've ever had that conversation, the parent says, not my kid. It's a natural defense mechanism. No parent wants to believe that their children are making choices like that. So that would help in the process. The other thing I just wanted to caution you on, and maybe as we look forward into solidifying policies, is maybe, and this is not a knock in any way, shape, or form against school resource officers. We believe that's one of the best tools we have in the schools for lots of reasons. But using them as that immediate point of contact to get kids tested, and then if it does become a criminal justice issue, we've now fast-tracked kids to be put into the criminal justice system, which maybe we shouldn't be doing, because we know that once kids start to identify themselves a certain way, it's that looking glass image. And so that's something that we need to consider, not just to rely on taking kids to the school resource officers and then they get charged and then they go to juvenile probation. We all know that sometimes within juvenile probation, kids don't get the services that maybe they need either, just because of that system. They get caught up in that system too. So it's just a precautionary note on that. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
While I have you there, can I ask you a question about the clinical students?
Yes, ma'am.
Your opinion on testing kids that have access to the drugs in the hospital situation?
I think that's a good idea. I think that, like she said, we're testing them for TB. This is a profession that if you've got any inkling of a drug and alcohol abuse problem, they need to be identified very quickly on it, because if it is a career they want to have, then we need to make sure that they have the resources to be able to do that. And if they're already starting to abuse substances, then unfortunately we're putting them in a very high-risk situation. So yeah, I don't think that that's a problem at all. In fact, I would encourage that.
Thank you,
Do you think that having a drug testing policy that allows you to, not that is a random, but just a policy that allows you to, is in any way, shape, or form a deterrent?
That allows you for suspicion or just in general?
Yes.
Just to be clear. And years ago, you and I had conversations about this, and unfortunately or fortunately, I've kind of changed my tune a bit just in watching the world around us. And I think that that's where I come down with both feet strongly on the prevention and education side, just simply for the fact, if that's the only reason we're giving kids, if that's the only reason to say no that we're giving kids is the fact that they may get pulled out and tested, then we need to be doing a lot more different work on the front end. We need to be giving kids a lot more reasons for that. We need to, and especially the education system can do that. And I think by keeping the schools a learning environment, through the prevention that we're doing, we're teaching kids, and that's what schools are about. And I think instead of, monitoring them to a certain degree, but I think definitely for suspicion is very appropriate, because that lets kids know if I'm going to come to school high or under the influence, or I'm acting up in the classroom to the point of where a teacher is having to pull me out, take me down to the principal's office, then I know I might actually get tested. Because that's the anecdotal stuff that we hear from kids, is that they know kids are sitting in the classroom under the influence.
Mm-hmm.
But for lots of reasons, they're not getting identified and they're not getting referred. And I think a lot of that has to do with the teacher education, the early identification and referral, which we really want to help with that in the future going forward.
And that goes with you're going to start the staff awareness.
Yes, ma'am.
Program, so
absolutely
that goes right in with it.
I want it all. I want everything we can do for the kids to prevent. So I want the education. And the population that I work with here, I have a sensitive issue
absolutely
about this anyway, because it's more than just marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Mm-hmm. And it's stuff that one-time use can kill them.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about it. I'm unapologetic about my passion. And I want to give our kids every tool.
Yeah.
Anything we can do that makes them not want to touch it.
I agree. And I do want to support what the school is doing, though, reaching out to the parents, because, that's the bottom line with a lot of these kids, is that even if we identify them, get them referred for services, they're living in families where this is ongoing. So being able to reach out to the parents is a really nice preventative tool. And you know me, I've been doing this for 30 years. And if I really thought that taking the school's resources and putting them into that pot would really be of a long-term, statistically significant boon for the school, I would recommend that. But I think when resources are tight, there's a lot of other ways that we can use them. And being able to pay for the kids that need the services that can't get them, parents are saying, I can't take them. We hear that. We're on a sliding scale fee. We have Metro United Way dollars that help us kind of offset those expenses, and we still get parents to say, I can't even make that fee. And so we'll take them for free. We'll remove that barrier. So the ability for the school to do that on a sweeping scale for the students, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
This is what I would recommend in how a policy should be made, is that a draft be made. And the way I'm hearing it, that there's a drug policy that we can test students on suspicion. May. And it's up to you guys to come up with a draft on that and present it to us, and then we can look it over the next time. Is that enough information to give Bill, or are you guys okay with that? Or yeah,
I would say I'm changing my mind after your comments about the clinical students, and I'd like to talk to a couple of medical professional people
yeah.
About what they think, and because I was really against that in the beginning, and perhaps I'm softening that position. But to single out participants in extracurricular activities, I don't think is right. I mean, we're putting them in a positive environment, the extracurricular activity, and we're going to take them out of that, where that might help their ego, self-esteem, whatever, and might keep them from participating in the drug culture more. Plus, I don't think it's good to segregate those students. I think we ought to do everything we can do to encourage every student to participate in any kind of extracurricular activity, and I don't want to put up extra hurdles to have that happen. So
I agree. I think with the sentiment of what you're saying, unfortunately, the law doesn't allow us to test everybody. That's the only reason why it's an issue of separating those categories. I don't like it, but
yeah,
I understand what you're saying completely.
And from what I work in the pharmacy profession and install Pyxis machines. I did it for several years and investigated discrepancies. And there are a lot of people in the healthcare profession who are addicted to drugs, and they have access to it. No matter how hard you try, somebody who really, really wants to get a hold of those drugs will. And they will find a way, even if they get them out of the Pyxis machine, to give them to themselves versus the patient. You can track it eventually, but a lot of times by the time you find out who's doing it, it's almost too late. And I really hate to see our students get sucked into that, because it's one of your top careers that you'll choose if you happen to want to have access to drugs. So I just think it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm. So, Bill, that would be included in your draft about, would that be a separate situation where it's drug testing, clinical?
I'm hearing two things, that I will bring a draft and then the board can look at that language and vote up or down on it. So I'm hearing may suspicion and for clinical students.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how it's written for the clinical students for the TB test.
Well,
but you know what I mean? It seems to me it would just fall under that.
I mean, the trouble with all these policy changes is sometimes it also influences handbook changes, different things. So it takes a little while to look through the policies and make sure it's there. But getting the wording is probably an easy thing. I'm sure that's been used. There's other places in the state.
And this would just be a draft. We're not talking about first reading or anything. Just a draft. Okay. Just so don't. Let's do a draft first. Bring us a draft.
You want a draft first, and then a first reading the following month, and then
then we can see if there's anything we need to tweak, and then.
I mean, why wouldn't you do?
Yeah. I think another.
I was gonna say, I know you can do extracurricular and athletics, but I don't know if you can actually do clinical.
We'll find out.
Find out. Yeah.
Move forward.
I think another thing that I've heard mentioned was the difference between an SRO doing the test and maybe an outside firm that we would contract with. I don't know what the legal ramifications are of that.
Well, I think that's one of the legal things we need to find out with our attorneys, is if we do have suspicion of somebody doing illegal activity, are we required to report that? And I think I know the answer.
I think I know the answer too.
Tell me.
Each board member takes an oath of office to uphold the laws of the state of Indiana, and I would imagine the school administration would direct our principals to uphold the laws of Indiana.
Yes.
So you're saying the SRO is adequate, and we really can't get around putting them in the criminal justice system, whether we test or whether an SRO.
Bill's got to ask the question a little bit, but I just think
that's where I was going.
We take an oath of office to uphold the laws, and you either uphold the laws or you don't.
There's probably suspicion and suspicion too, and different. So.
Is there a possibility you give the parent the option to test, and if they choose not to test, then you say, okay, then you will get the SRO to test. So
you can do that.
We're going to test the parents.
No, that's
rock it out.
We might need to test the parents.
That's going to be interesting.
I'll look into it, and I'll try to have a draft in July, but it could be as late as August. But I'll do my best.
Okay.
Do you want a copy of the Clarksville's policy?
I'll be glad to. I'll look it up anyway.
You give it to
me after the meeting, Leanne. Thank you.
Okay. Are we clear as mud and all that?
Yeah. Pretty clear.
Crystal? You can tell what movie I watched last night. Crystal? I know there's miscellaneous, and I wanted to congratulate Mr. Hines. I went to the ISBA regional meeting, and he is now, I should pin him, like in fraternities or something. He's a Cap 1 ISBA. He's attended.
You can pass it down if you like.
You don't trust her?
Not with an exposed pen.
And then also, and I'm going to find this plaque, and it's had to have been around forever, but your all's names are on this, and that we are an outstanding school board, but that's because some people are involved in ISBA. Again, I'm on the master level, you're level 1. I think Jan's level 2. You might be level 2 already from being the last time. I would urge you all to attend, but so we can continue to be an outstanding school board. George, you're on here. So, but the more people we have getting points and different levels, we can be an exemplary school board. So I would urge everyone to attend. So we're going to find out where this plaque is so we can hang them on there. All right, anything else? I think we've had some great discussion tonight. I really do, and I appreciate it. Appreciate it, everyone.
Just got some documents for you to sign before you leave.
Okay, all right. Anything else? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.